We, we used to think we could just go out and see people wherever we wanted to go see people. Then all of a sudden the government says you're shut down and you can't move and you're stuck wherever you are. And then you have to figure out, well, wait, how do I adjust to this new environment? Well, new things like Zoom become more popular. We've been using Zoom and Skype for many, many years, but they become more popular. They become mission critical rather than just sort of a nice to have. And people all kind of come to them and say, oh, this is great. There's a new way to operate, and hey, in some ways it's even better than the way I was operating before. People are open to the idea of like, oh, okay, let's put on the VR goggles. I've been stuck in this room for 3 weeks with nothing to do. Let me put on some VR goggles and see what VR is all about. People go, hey, well, I've been putting this off for a long time. Why don't I download some, buy some Bitcoin and try to buy it and sell it and try to spend it and invest it, and let's just try this Bitcoin thing. Let's set up a smart contract. Let's see how a smart contract works. These things all start to permeate our consciousness, our group consciousness. So when you've got the world sort of shutting down, it also begins to create and explore and experiment with things that are out there, and a lot of the great technologies jumped across the what do you call that? Going from innovator to the general population, the chasm. They jumped across the chasm during a time like this. It was in the year 2000 when we had the dot-com crash. It crashed, and then everybody thought, oh, well, this is all worthless. Why do we have an internet? And then little by little, people said, oh, well, maybe I should buy some things on the internet. Before that, they were all saying, oh, why would I ever put my credit card on the internet? I don't trust anybody. It was a little like this time where it was everybody's saying, oh, they've got my data and whatever. Why would I put my credit card on the internet? Somebody's going to steal it, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out then Amazon became this big, huge monster success. And it was a similar time where the wheels come off, everybody stops, and then the entrepreneurs, the true entrepreneurs, get very creative, and they go, well, look, hey, we can fight this virus another way, or we can, imagine what's happening right now. People, we've been pushing and funding companies all around using data for healthcare. All of a sudden, data for healthcare is the center of the universe right now. It's been years we funded Cloud Medics. They proved that they were a better diagnostic tool than any doctor could ever be because they use all this data. Well, that's just the beginning. Now you're going to be able to not just use your medical records, but you'll be able to use your Fitbit results and what you had for breakfast and what seat you sat on the airplane and all that for your diagnostics. And no doctor could ask you enough questions to get all that data to make a determination on your health. And healthcare therapeutics also. People are saying, God, how are we going to develop something to fight this virus? Well, God, we've been funding companies that do biochemistry in the computer for years, for many, many years. And suddenly people are realizing the most efficient way to go after a virus or any kind of a disease is to run simulations where you run multiple drugs against multiple that are past FDA approval against a disease, and then something happens. You can also design a drug from scratch to go after a disease, and it turns out that these simulations are better or are about to be better at determining efficacy and safety than the FDA is, because it's all been worked into the system. Artificial intelligence is a great time for artificial intelligence. You're seeing it in many, many fields. In fact, I'm even looking at 3 companies, 3 right now, that I'm potentially going to back, that are going to use AI to replace me, to get rid of the venture, to be a better venture capitalist than a venture capitalist can be. That's going to be those are going to be major breakthroughs. And think about it, you're holed up in an apartment and you're an AI scientist. You are going to work 10 times as hard to get that thing done, and you're going to be able to replace mundane tasks that people do in their ordinary job. And your life's going to be, everybody's life is going to improve. It's going to rise up because AI is handling some of those boring jobs. It's really an interesting time. You know, there are a lot of ways of looking at this virus that I've thought of. My immediate reaction to the virus was, let it flow through the population and let us fight it off, because you have a herd immunity, which I feel that we may be losing by being isolated. We're losing some of the herd immunity. And so I'm not so sure all these governments are right. So I was very concerned about that. Now that we're isolated, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, there are some silver linings to this. You know, the environment's getting better because there's no traffic. People are using more internet, more of this and less fossil fuels. The oil prices are coming down. There's some really interesting things. Those are unique opportunities for an entrepreneur to look at and go, huh, interesting. Oil prices are way down. What can we do with that oil? Or what are other things that are going to happen? And then think about this. Think about the world has sort of come to an end for about a quarter, like a full quarter. And how does it creep back? A lot of restaurants are going to be permanently out of business. It might not be a bad idea to start a restaurant chain. A lot of commercial real estate is completely on its heels because nobody's going to the office. And so nobody's renting nobody wants to pay for any real estate because they're staying home. What does that do? I mean, does that mean that no one will ever want to go back out to the office? Or does it mean that, hey, this is a temporary thing and it's just going to take some time for those rents to come back up? There's another way to look at this virus, and that is, it's kind of a long story, but I'm looking at the world and I'm saying it's becoming more decentralized, and that means it's going to be more open and more transparent, and the borders are going to mean less and less. So what used to be our tribal system, which was, hey, here's our border, don't touch us, and we won't touch you. We don't want a war. You guys stay in your border, we'll stay in ours. Well, the internet made it so that this world is completely one big web of incredible enterprise and economy, and and we're all kind of interconnected in so many different ways, so that the tribalism that comes up, like trade wars, they cut all those connections off. And that hurts everybody, because we've worked these deals, we're better off with these deals, and it hurts everybody. Well, now the tribalisms kind of come back, but there's been this globalism too. It's like one country says this, and then they all communicate with each other, and then they all decide to do the same thing. That could mean that we're all jumping right off a big cliff, but it could also mean that communication can help us, survive as a species or whatever. All of that, the change from tribalism to globalism, the decentralization of everything, the rapid communication of any kind of media is going to open up our world in so many different ways. Entrepreneurs everywhere are going to come up with amazing opportunities to wedge into existing industries and change them, or create something that creates its own industry. I think all of you, it looks like you're all kind of interested in entrepreneurship. Well, that's great. I would, whatever you were doing before, I would do a brainstorming session and rethink your business based on this new environment, because it may actually really help you. I noticed at Draper University, we take students for 5 weeks and we favor them if they're in funding and all that other stuff. But we take them for 5 weeks and we turn them into true entrepreneurs. Well, during that 5 weeks, we have a hero-a-thon. And it's like a hackathon, but then we throw in some new thing. Like one time we said, you got to use a plunger in your business, or you've got to you have to have a pizza somewhere in your business. You got to. We threw in weird things, weird wrenches into their works, and it gets them thinking in a new way. It's like saying, what's the worst restaurant idea you could possibly come up with? And then turn that into a good one. That's a better way of operating than just trying to come up with the best kind of a restaurant. This was the same kind of thing. Well, we have a crisis right in front of us that is your plunger to your hero-a-thon. You can create a hackathon and come up with all sorts of new ways of operating. And with all those new ways, you're going to be able to do extraordinary things. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to leave it up for questions, but before I do, I would like to let all of you know what my email address is, because I'm not going to be able to listen to all the pitches. I'm tim@draper.vc. And I went to HBS, so I definitely want to hear from you. I know how important that education was for me, and I'm sure for all of you, it's been a great addition. And I hope that you go out and use that incredible education you're getting to do something really extraordinary with it. It's a great piece of value, and spread your knowledge and and then take it and manipulate it and move it into the direction you think that the world should go. So with that, so if you've got a business plan you want to pitch, tim@draper.vc, and I read them